Imagine sitting in class, the lights flickering off as your teacher whispers, "This is not a drill." The air turns heavy. You hear slow footsteps in the hallway. Then, a knock at the door. 3 soft taps. A voice follows, calm but wrong. "It's just a drill. Open the door." Your heart races. Every breath feels like it will give you away. You glance at the doorknob, watch it turn, back and forth, as someone unseen tries to get inside. Now picture this. A clown with a painted grin pressed against your classroom window, waving slowly, waiting for the moment the blinds come down so he can vanish into the trees. Or the shadow of a masked figure outside your school carrying a black duffel bag, ready to turn an ordinary Friday into a nightmare. These are not movie scripts. These are real stories. Welcome to The Price Paid. Subscribe now, because the horrors we bring are not fiction. They are the real nightmares that slip into schools where safety was supposed to be guaranteed. Tonight, you'll hear 5 disturbing lockdown stories that prove the monsters aren't hiding under your bed. Sometimes they're already in the hallway. When people think of high school, they imagine the usual dramas, cliques, and occasional fights. My school was not like that. It was a quiet, rural high school, the kind where almost everyone knew each other's names and faces. Our graduating class had fewer than 200 students, which meant that even if you were not close friends with someone, you recognized them in the hallway. There was little crime, little excitement, and almost nothing that would make the evening news. Most of us spent our afternoons riding bikes, playing ball, or hanging out at small diners. On the surface, it was the perfect small-town setting where nothing terrible was ever supposed to happen. But that sense of safety was an illusion, one that was shattered one day when a student named Luke decided he had reached his breaking point. Luke was not the stereotypical outcast you see in movies. He did not dress strangely, he did not glare at people, and he was not someone you would avoid on sight. He was simply quiet, almost unnervingly so. He rarely spoke in class, never raised his hand, and when he did interact, it was in the softest tone. Teachers sometimes commented on how shy he was, but no one thought much of it. The truth is, most people ignored him. He was not popular, but he was not openly hated either. He just existed on the sidelines of our school life, invisible unless someone chose to notice him. And unfortunately, the only people who seemed to notice him were those who wanted to make him the butt of their jokes. It started small in our computer class. That was one of the few electives where students from different grades mixed together. Seniors would make comments about how he never spoke, pretending to be scared of his silence, calling him creepy. At first, it was just words, but soon pieces of paper were flicked at the back of his head. Each time, Luke turned around with an expression that made me uneasy. His face carried a strange mix of sadness and anger, but also something else, like he had already given up on being treated fairly. Our teacher, a soft-spoken man who rarely confronted students, never told them to stop. So the teasing continued, and I did what most teenagers do. I looked away and told myself it was not my business. One afternoon, long after school had ended, I saw Luke sitting alone on a curb near the parking lot. He looked smaller somehow, hunched into himself. Something inside me felt guilty, so I asked if he needed a ride. His face lit up, almost like he had not expected anyone to speak kindly to him. He accepted, and during that 10-minute drive home, I learned more about him than I had in 2 years of classes together. He admitted that the teasing was not just in our computer class, that he felt targeted in more than one subject. He said it casually, but the weight in his words made my stomach twist. By the time I dropped him off, I thought of him as more than just the quiet kid. He was a person who had been carrying loneliness on his back every day. After that, we greeted each other in class. Nothing more, just small acknowledgments that seemed to matter more to him than I realized. And then one day, he did not show up. I noticed the empty chair, but assumed he was sick. Hours later, during my 7th period English class, the intercom clicked on with a voice I will never forget. Lockdown. This is not a drill. The room fell into chaos for a moment before our teacher slammed off the lights and ordered us into the corner. We sat in silence, listening to our own breathing, waiting for the sound of footsteps. Minutes stretched like hours. The announcement came again. There was someone outside the school in a mask, carrying a black duffel bag, trying to get in. The doors were locked, security was on high alert, and police were on the way. When the day was cut short, we all left shaken but alive. None of us knew who that masked figure had been. That night, I woke up to the sound of tapping at my window. At first, I thought it was a branch, until I saw the silhouette of a person standing just beyond the glass. My chest tightened with fear. Then a voice whispered my name. It was Luke. My stomach sank, as I realized what that meant. He confessed right there, through the glass, that he had been the one behind the lockdown. He said he had tried to do something bad. I asked him why he was there, how he had even found me. He explained that he remembered the deli I mentioned near my house, biked around until he spotted my car, and followed that lead. The way he described it so plainly made my skin crawl. He asked to come inside, to talk, but I could not let him in. Instead, I told him to confess to the school to get help. When he refused to leave, I yelled for my dad, and the noise sent him running into the night. We called the police, and they already knew about the masked intruder. By the next day, officers had spoken to his parents and eventually located Luke. He confessed to them too. He was charged with making a terroristic threat. He served time, though no one knew exactly how long. By the time we graduated, he was gone. Some said he came back years later, others said he moved away. The truth was unclear. Looking back, I wonder if things could have been different. If the teasing had stopped, if the teacher had intervened, if more people had shown him kindness. But I also cannot excuse what he almost did. Bringing a mask and a duffel bag to a school full of kids is not just a cry for help. It is a decision that could have turned my small-town high school into a tragedy on the evening news. I will never forget the way his voice sounded at my window. Soft but heavy with regret. Maybe he got cold feet. Maybe my small act of kindness made him hesitate. Or maybe he just did not have the courage to follow through. Whatever the truth, that night taught me that even the quietest person in the room may be carrying storms inside them that no one else can see. And in a world where lockdowns can happen at any moment, that is a storm we cannot afford to ignore. In the fall of 2016, a strange phenomenon spread across the United States. News reports, social media posts, and blurry phone videos showed clowns appearing in places they did not belong. Parking lots, street corners, playgrounds, and even outside schools. Some dismissed it as a dumb viral trend. Others whispered that it was something darker. I was only in 5th grade at the time, and though adults laughed it off, to us kids it was terrifying. Every story of a clown lurking in the shadows felt like a warning that one day we might see one with our own eyes. That day came sooner than I ever wanted. It was a regular school day, around 1 in the afternoon. The class was quiet as most of us worked on an assignment. Then a girl gasped loudly, her voice cutting through the silence. She said there was a clown outside. At first, I thought she was joking, but when half the class rushed to the window, I followed. There he was, standing only a few feet away, staring straight into our classroom. His outfit was oversized and filthy, red and yellow fabric hanging loose, like it had been dragged through mud. His face was painted ghostly white, with black circles around the eyes, and a wide grin that looked like it was carved into his cheeks. He raised his arm and began to wave slowly, like he was greeting us in the most unsettling way possible. Some students laughed nervously, but I felt cold. Our teacher, Mrs. Riker, approached the window, trying to appear calm. She told the man to leave, raising her voice so he could hear through the glass. He did not react. He just stood there, smiling, waving, watching us. The tension in the room grew unbearable. Mrs. Riker picked up the classroom phone and stepped into the hallway while speaking to the office. When she returned, she shut the blinds tightly, but that did not erase the image of the clown burned into my mind. A minute later, the loudspeaker came alive with the principal's voice. Teachers were told to initiate lockdown procedures immediately. The lights went out, the door was locked, and all of us crawled beneath our desks. The giggles stopped, replaced by nervous whispers and heavy silence. My heart pounded so loud I was afraid the clown outside could hear it through the walls. For 30 minutes, we sat in that position, afraid to move, waiting for something to happen. We did not hear him leave. We did not know if he was still there. When the principal's voice returned, he said the situation was under control and the lockdown was over, but no one explained who the clown was, why he was there, or what he wanted. We were told only that security confirmed he was gone. School carried on like nothing had happened, but everyone knew something was wrong. Dismissal came, and the air outside felt heavy. Students clustered in small groups, talking in hushed tones. I walked with my friend Chris, both of us trying to act normal. Behind us, 2 girls screamed suddenly and ran past. They pointed toward the small patch of woods that separated the school from the road. I turned, and my blood ran cold. The clown was there again, half hidden behind trees. The same grimy outfit, the same painted face. He was waving again, but this time it was directed at the girls, like he was beckoning them to come closer. The way his hand moved was not playful. It was slow and deliberate, like a predator luring prey. Chris and I did not wait to see more. We sprinted home, lungs burning, not daring to look back. When I finally made it through my front door, I told my parents everything. They called the school immediately. Later, I heard that the police had been notified again and searched the area, but they found nothing. Whoever that clown was, he vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only fear and unanswered questions. Some believed it was just a disturbed person taking advantage of the clown craze. Others whispered about kidnappings and worse. Nobody ever discovered his identity. For weeks after, the image haunted me. Every time I walked near trees, I felt like someone was watching from just beyond the branches. Every creak of the house at night made me wonder if he had found where I lived. My classmates joked about it in public, but I could tell many of them were shaken. A few refused to walk home alone for months. Parents kept repeating that it was just a prank, that no real harm was done. But I remember the way he stood there after the lockdown, waiting for us, knowing we would come out eventually. That was not a prank, that was patience. That was someone who wanted to be seen, who wanted to plant fear in our minds, and maybe something worse. Time moved on. The clown sightings faded from the news, and people forgot. But I never did. Because while most people laughed about 2016 as a silly moment in internet culture, I lived through a version of it that could have turned into a tragedy. If even one teacher had dismissed it, if the clown had decided to push harder, if a child had been curious enough to approach him in the woods, the story would not have ended quietly. The fact that he returned after being driven away still unsettles me the most. He did not just want attention, he wanted to come back. He wanted us to know he was still there. Sometimes I think about that moment when he waved at the girls. That slow, deliberate motion felt like the gesture of a hunter. If I had not run, if Chris and I had hesitated, maybe he would have turned his attention to us. And even though years have passed, the image of his painted grin pressed against the classroom window remains clear in my mind. I tell myself he was just some sick person feeding on the fear of kids. But deep down, I fear he was testing how far he could go, waiting for a chance to cross the line between scaring and taking action. That possibility is what truly keeps me up at night. March 30, 2020 began like any other Monday. The sun was already beating down with unusual heat for early spring, and my classroom buzzed with the usual chatter of sixth graders struggling to pay attention in math. I was a teacher, but not just any teacher. I was also a guardian. My stepdaughter, technically not mine by blood, but mine by law, attended the same school. Her mother, my best friend Joanne, had been murdered years earlier by her husband. That man became a national headline, convicted of multiple killings, locked away with no hope of parole. Taking in his daughter had felt like the only right thing to do, but it also meant that her past was tied to mine. I always feared that connection would resurface. On that hot March afternoon, it did. The school was remote, tucked far away from gas stations and highways, the kind of place that normally felt safe because of its isolation. Around midday, my phone buzzed with a notification from the school system. Someone had arrived to pick up my stepdaughter. That should have been routine, but it was not. She had no appointments, no family within 10 miles. When I checked the details, my stomach tightened. The system said her biological father was there to collect her. That was impossible. He was supposed to be behind bars for the rest of his life. The more I stared at the message, the more it felt like a bad dream. My reply was immediate. I was present at the school and no one authorized could pick her up. The office told me they would verify with the principal. My hands shook as I hung up the phone. Something told me not to wait. I called her classroom and asked for her to be sent to mine immediately. Within minutes, she appeared in my doorway, confused but safe. I tried to keep teaching, but my mind was elsewhere. Less than 10 minutes later, the siren blared. Lockdown, not a drill. I ordered desks to be shoved against the door, blinds closed, and students pushed into the far corner. The room fell into fearful silence. We stayed that way for nearly an hour, then another. Each tick of the clock felt like someone counting down to something terrible. I thought about the stories I had read, the drills we had practiced, and the reality that danger was not always a stranger. Sometimes it was the very person meant to protect you. By the time police cleared the building, nearly 2 hours had passed. Officers escorted me from the room for questioning. I told them everything, that I was raising Joanne's daughter, that her father was a convicted murderer, that it made no sense for him to be anywhere near the school. They exchanged uneasy looks. Then they told me the truth. Earlier that day, a prison bus transporting inmates had been struck by a car. 10 prisoners had died, 2 guards were knocked out, and 20 inmates had escaped. Among them was him, the man who had destroyed Joanne's life, the one I had feared for years. Somehow, in the chaos, he had managed to vanish from custody, and now he was looking for his daughter. There were police already waiting at our home, anticipating that he might go there. But as hours passed with no sign of him, attention shifted back to the school. The lockdown was not just precautionary. It was because he was spotted near the area, or at least someone thought they had seen him. Rumors spread quickly. He had stolen a car. He had broken into a house. He had been seen near the woods. None of it could be confirmed. All we knew was that he was missing, dangerous, and desperate, and that made him unpredictable. The children eventually went home, escorted to buses or picked up by parents who flooded the parking lot with panicked faces. My stepdaughter stayed by my side, her small hand gripping mine so tightly that it hurt. I tried to reassure her, but my voice cracked every time I spoke. In her eyes, I saw the reflection of Joanne's face, and for a moment I wondered if history was about to repeat itself. That thought alone kept me awake long into the night. Over the next days, news spread that many of the escapees had been captured. Police insisted the situation was under control, but the memory of that day, the sound of the siren, the silence of the children pressed into the corner of my classroom, stayed with me. I knew how close we had come. If I had not acted on instinct, if I had not called my stepdaughter to my room before the lockdown, what might have happened? Would she have been in the hallway when he arrived? Would she have been taken before anyone realized? Even now, years later, the thought makes me shiver. People think of schools as fortresses with locked doors and security cameras, but all it takes is one breach for that sense of safety to crumble. We drill for intruders, for fires, for natural disasters. But no one drills for the day your past comes back to find you, wearing the face of a man you once trusted. That is not in any manual. That is not something you can practice for. That is the nightmare that lives outside the boundaries of policy and procedure. I still teach in that same school. I still drive the same roads surrounded by fields and long stretches of quiet, but I never forget how quickly peace can vanish. The children who were in my class that day are older now, some in high school, some already moved away. But I know they remember too. The day the siren was not a drill. The day they saw fear in their teacher's eyes. The day a man with nothing left to lose almost came for what he thought was still his. That memory is carved into the walls of that classroom, as much a part of it as the chalkboards and desks. And sometimes when I walk the halls alone after dismissal, I feel that same chill I felt on March 30th. The knowledge that safety is fragile, that danger does not always wear a mask or carry a weapon. Sometimes it comes in the form of a name on a school database, a name that should have been buried in the past but somehow found its way back. And when it does, all you can do is lock the door, keep the children closed, and hope the siren ends with everyone still alive. Freshman year of high school was supposed to be a time of new beginnings, making friends, and figuring out who you wanted to become. Instead, one particular day etched itself into my memory like a scar. It began with a lockdown that we all thought was just another routine drill. We'd done them before, sometimes every couple of months. You groaned, rolled your eyes, crouched in the corner, and waited for it to end. But that day proved that not every drill is fake, and not every knock at the classroom door comes from someone you can trust. It was fourth period, Earth Science,
yes,
and we had just finished a pop quiz. The intercom came on with the familiar instructions. Doors locked, lights off, stay quiet. At first, laughter spread across the room. Everyone assumed it was practice. Our teacher, Mrs. Chen, sighed and locked the door, her body language suggesting annoyance more than fear. But then came a second announcement. The same voice, more rushed, more urgent. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The laughter stopped instantly. A chill swept through the room as if the words themselves had lowered the temperature. Mrs. Chen motioned for us to stay down and keep silent. The only sound was the faint wail of sirens in the distance, growing closer. Minutes passed like hours. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, not hurried, like a police officer or teacher. They stopped right outside our classroom door. My breath caught in my throat. A soft knock followed, 3 times. Then a male voice spoke. "This is just a drill. You can open the door now." We looked at each other in disbelief. Everyone's eyes went to Mrs. Chen, who shook her head firmly, pressing a finger to her lips. The doorknob began to turn slowly, back and forth, as if someone was testing it. The voice repeated the request, calm but insistent. Then the knocks grew harder. The air in the room thickened with fear. No one moved. Some of the girls began to cry quietly, muffling their sobs against their knees. After what felt like an eternity, the noise stopped. Silence settled again, broken only by the faint sounds of movement in the hall. Someone whispered that they saw a shadow pass by the narrow glass window on the door. Then another. We stayed frozen, waiting for the next sound. Instead, a scream pierced the hallway. A girl's voice, sharp and terrified. Then silence again. My skin crawled. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would give me away. We sat that way for minutes more until finally shouts rang out, deeper voices barking commands. Police officers moving through the building, ordering everyone to stay put. When they reached our room, they knocked with authority, then unlocked the door with a key. Mrs. Chen did not move until they flashed badges. Only then did she guide us out, lined up single file. Outside, the scene was chaos cop cars lined up, a SWAT van parked by the entrance. I caught a glimpse of a man in cuffs, pale, long-haired, dressed in dark clothes. He was not a student. He had slipped in during a delivery, taking advantage of an open side door. No one ever told us what was in his backpack. They only said the situation was resolved. But for me, the memory of his voice at the door, the way he tried to trick us, will never fade. Years later, I still wonder what might have happened if Mrs. Chen had been less cautious, if one nervous student had believed the voice and opened the door. We might not have walked out of that classroom alive. The scream we heard down the hall still echoes in my memory, proof that fear can leave scars without a single wound.
Can anyone hear me?
As if that story were not enough, another incident soon after reminded me again that schools are not safe havens. I was older by then, a sophomore at Northside High in Jacksonville, North Carolina. It was early morning, just before the first bell. I was in chorus class, sitting with my headphones in, when my teacher suddenly told us to move into the storage closet. At first, I thought it was another drill. We had practiced one just the day before. Still, I followed orders, cramming into the closet with the others as the lights went out. Darkness swallowed us. For nearly 2 hours, we sat in silence, only the faint light under the door reminding us we were not sealed away completely. I kept listening for footsteps, for voices, for anything. The distant sound of sirens confirmed my worst suspicion. This was real. When we were finally let out, the room felt different, heavy. Students whispered. Teachers avoided eye contact. Eventually, word trickled through. Someone had been stabbed. 3 people injured. One of them dead. A 16-year-old charged with manslaughter, assault, and a list of other crimes. Later, I learned that someone even filmed the attack on Snapchat. The thought of it made me sick. A life ended, others scarred forever, and some people treated it like entertainment. My mother cried when she picked me up, and I cried with her. That night I lay in bed replaying the day, over and over. The idea that a classmate, just a kid not much older than me, could bring a weapon and turn a school hallway into a crime scene shattered the last bit of safety I thought I had left. Some people said it was gang-related, others said it was personal. To me, it did not matter. A boy was dead, and the walls of our school would never feel the same. Parents hovered nervously, students whispered in bathrooms, teachers tried to pretend things were normal, but none of us forgot. For weeks, I could not shake the feeling that more violence was coming, that retaliation was waiting around the corner. I found myself scanning the halls constantly, waiting for another shout, another scream, another lockdown. Safety had become a fragile illusion. Looking back on both days, the man at the door, and the stabbing, I realized how quickly normalcy can shatter. One moment you are taking a quiz, or sitting in chorus class with your headphones in. The next, you are pressed against a wall, holding your breath, or being told someone you passed in the hallway that morning is never coming back. Schools are supposed to protect us, to prepare us for the future. But they have also become the stage for nightmares, places where the line between life and death feels razor thin. And sometimes the monsters are not strangers in masks. Sometimes they are classmates carrying knives, voices on the other side of a locked door, or even people you waved to just the day before. That is the truth I carry. The truth none of us wanted, but all of us learned the hard way. Schools are supposed to be safe places, spaces where children and teenagers can focus on learning, growing, and planning for their futures. Yet the stories you have just heard reveal a darker truth. Lockdowns, once thought of as drills to be endured with eye rolls and sighs, are often the only things standing between life and death. Whether it was the silent boy who nearly brought tragedy to his classmates, the clown lurking at the windows and woods, the escaped killer father searching for his daughter, the stranger pretending to be an authority figure at a locked door, or the student who turned a hallway into a crime scene. Each story shows how quickly safety can crumble. What these incidents teach us is simple but sobering. Danger does not always arrive with a warning. It does not always wear a mask or carry a weapon in plain sight. Sometimes it hides in the quiet kid no one paid attention to, in the woods beside a playground, in the name of someone who should be locked away forever, or even in the classmate who sat beside you yesterday. The threat is unpredictable, but the response can save lives. There are lessons we must all carry. First, take every lockdown seriously. It is never just another drill until you are certain it is. Second, trust your instincts. The teacher who refused to open the door, the student who chose to run instead of approach the clown, the guardian who acted quickly to bring her stepdaughter to safety, all of them made decisions that may have prevented tragedy. Third, remember the basics. Lock doors, stay quiet, stay hidden. Do not open for anyone unless you are absolutely sure they are law enforcement. These actions sound simple, but in the chaos of fear, they are what keep people alive. For parents, teachers, and students, the reality is difficult to accept, but preparing mentally is just as important as the drills themselves. Talk about what to do, practice it, and understand that hesitation can be dangerous. Schools cannot promise perfect safety, but awareness, vigilance, and fast decisions can tip the balance. For students, know that if you ever feel fear, it is not weakness. It is survival. If someone makes you uncomfortable, if you notice something strange, tell someone. Speak up. Silence can give danger the space it needs to grow. These stories are disturbing, not because they are fiction, but because they are real. They happen in towns and schools that once believed they were safe. They happen to kids who thought the worst they would face was a bad grade or a tough practice. They remind us that horror does not only live in movies or books, it sometimes lives just down the hallway, knocking softly at a locked classroom door. Thank you for listening to these stories. If they chilled you, if they opened your eyes, then remember there are countless more out there. Stay alert, stay safe, and never forget that safety always comes at a cost. Subscribe to The Price Paid to hear more true tales of survival, fear, and the hidden dangers lurking in ordinary places, because the next story might be yours.